basically, we have started the development financing 2 weeks back, and we basically covered sessions introduction to credit or introduction to development financing as a session 1, and then we moved to SME banking as session 2, and financial support or sources of financing to entrepreneurs or SMEs would be in the 3rd session. We have been sharing reading materials for those 3 areas, so you can go through those notes and get an idea. Where when we come to past paper question discussions, so we will be able to get a kind of a detailed understanding of how the questions has been set in past papers. So that could be also be done in due course. So today, basically, as the 4th module, we are trying to understand the microfinancing, which is again one of the important section in the development financing syllabus. In most sessions, most past papers, most years, we are getting one question from microfinancing. So that itself tells the significance of a microfinancing module. I want to say that this is not a difficult, but if like we are planning to answer this type of a question, you need to be thorough on the key concepts of microfinancing, and then we can move on to the advanced areas of microfinance. Again, you can do it by referring some materials outside maybe today's class session. But I must say that when we do the classroom presentation together with the reading material, will more than sufficient to cover the past paper question. And again, this is not a difficult area where you can get maximum marks in development financing paper. So having said that, we try to start the microfinancing, and then in today's section, so we try to understand what is the general overview of microfinancing, why microfinancing is important in a country like Sri Lanka or for a developing country, and what's the definitions available in microfinancing. And then we try to understand what are the models that we can see in microfinancing module or microfinancing proposition, right? So those things that we need to understand, we are trying to discuss those things during the today's session. So this is basically the content of today's presentation, that is countries development, microfinancing in detail, microfinancing models, and into the Microfinancing Act, which has been passed in the Parliament 2016. Right. The first area where we try to understand microfinancing, we try to understand microfinancing and economic development. So you know that in every country, we talk about economic growth, economic development, per capita income, gross domestic product. So many parameters. So what is the importance in each financing proposition is what we need to know. We talk about project financing, we talk about SME financing, we talk about microfinancing. So then there may be different impacts would be done by these different financing proposition. So you need to understand each and every proposition separately, so that it is easy for us to understand the impact and what the the present status, and any challenges. And as bankers, what we could do more in order to use this proposition effectively in order to support the country's economic growth. So before moving to that, we try to understand some concepts. So developing nation could be defined in various ways. So as per the American Heritage Dictionary, it has been defined as a nation where the average income is much slower than the industrial nations, where the economy relies on few export crops, and where farming is conducted by primitive methods. Now see, I just want to share this because to get an understand the Sri Lankan status of development. If you take this definition, and there may be so many other definitions also, but if you take this definition, what it exactly say, average income is much lower than the industrial nations. If you pitch Sri Lanka's average income per capita, for examples, it's in 4,000 range dollar. So compared to Singapore, compared to Malaysia, compared to some other countries, so yes, we are not par with them. We are below with them. And if you take about economy relies on few export crops. Yes, we do have some service income like tourism and remittances of the foreign, like locally staff employed in other countries. So other than that, if we talk about tea, we talk about coconut, and we talk about cinnamon, right? To earn some foreign income. And if you take farming also, that we talk about, we are great into the agriculture. We are doing very good in agriculture, but still that, we need to do more innovative or maybe more industrial or maybe advanced methods in order to get best out of the agriculture. If you set those parameters, some those observations, we can still say we have not reached to the developed nation level. So we are at basically developing nation. So then we need to understand our country still in the developing nation, and then the importance of banks and financing propositions as we just discussed, like infrastructure financing, like SME financing, microfinancing is equally important. So I just want to share this very high level concepts because then we understand the context, and then we can discuss further into these type of financing methods. And again, as I was told you some time back, if you do have any question, you can raise me, and then we can discuss further on that, and then we can continue as and when the questions has been cleared off. So measurements to determine developing nation, that's what we are there. Basically, what are the criteria, what are the parameters available in order us to assess the country's development? If you refer Central Bank annual report, you will be able to get an idea about so many parameters related to development status. Say income per capita is easily defined as income earned per person in 1 year. It's a very good parameter. So many things are being discussed in the political front, but as professionals, we need to understand where are we. And it's good that if you as bankers also we refer those parameters and get an idea. It's not difficult. If you go to the central bank web, if you go to the statistical department web, so you will be able to get these data on current terms. So per capita income is a good parameter, indicator in order to understand where are we. Though true that we have projected, we have some plans to move it to a higher level, but it's still around 4,000 range, right? So if you compare to Singapore versus Sri Lanka, it's something 50,000 or so per capita income dollars. So you can see the difference. We talk about Singapore was with us, I mean same level maybe 30 20 years back, but now they have moved to a very high level. So that gives an understanding, yes, we are yet to explore, we are yet to use our resources and then enhance our development status level. The GDP, gross domestic product, total market value of all goods and services produced within the borders of a nation during a specified period. So again, you can find these numbers if you refer CBSL annual report. So it talks about year-on-year GDP, last year, this year, and this year projected for previous year. So that gives you an understanding. So where are we? Important to note that whether our overall GDP targets are in line, if there is any deviation, what could we do? So example, so if something happened to agricultural segment due to maybe a pandemic like this, or maybe due to agricultural natural disaster like floods, and then there may be a bigger impact on agriculture sector. So it will have a direct impact on GDP. Similarly, some issue in the tourism sector, or it comes under the services sector. If you see that some impact on the tourism sector, then we can see issue in receiving the foreign currency. So we are not getting the enough foreign currency to Sri Lanka. So that might have an impact for your GDP again. Then life expectancy, number of years a person expected to live based on statistics. Important parameter. If you take Sri Lanka, life expectancy of a person is around 70 to 75. Is any idea that in the forum who is having a higher life expectancy in Sri Lanka compared to male versus female? Whom do you think that the higher life expectancy? Males in Sri Lanka or females in Sri Lanka? Any idea? It's females, right? So they live more than the males in Sri Lanka. So that's a life expectancy. That's just for a kind of a thought. But you need to understand the importance of expectancy. The rate of literacy, ability to read and write. Lastly, HDI, Human Development Index, statistical measurement of health and well-being. So there may be so many other parameters that one can find and to understand a country's development status. So why I am discussing with these things is, one way one thing is that you need to know, based on these parameters, what is the present status of Sri Lankan economy or Sri Lankan development status. And then, having identified our status, then we need to work on the concepts that we are talking about, the financing propositions, to support, to enhance this development status. So by doing that only, we can bring this country to the next level. Example, we talk about exports. We talk about earning foreign currency. We talk about knowledge economy. Right? So first you have to understand what is our resources, and then we work on that. By doing that as a team, like maybe the government to banks to entrepreneurs, and then we can bring this country to the next level. So it's a teamwork. But as bankers, what we need to understand is, so what are these parameters, and how we can contribute, being in separate segments, to drive this economic to next level. So having said that, we move to understand some factors contributing to developing nation, because first we understand some parameters, then we talk about some factors are critically important if we want to next level or move further in the development index. Rapid population growth, lack of industrialization, lack of infrastructure, political turmoil and war, economic vulnerability, minimal education, healthcare, nutrition. You can see. So when you see these numbers, what happened? Just take an example. Say rapid population growth. It's good that population is growing, but problem here is, if the economy is not supporting to that extent, then the increased population will not be getting that economic benefits, will in turn bring the country down. If you take example like lack of infrastructure, talk about roads, telecom, electric, plumbing, highways, right? So you need to enhance these sort of thing in order to bring more investment, more efficient economy, efficient production, productivity in the production. So very important, because otherwise we might not be able to compete with our competitors, which again are some other countries. Let's say if we incur higher cost on processing a unit, where when you are competing with the international market, you are unable to be within the competition, so unable to make the impact. So critically important factors. Yeah, you can talk about concepts, strategies, but these are underlying factors which support to execute those strategies. Political turmoil and war, very important. I think many of us have that experience where when our country was undergoing 30-year war, so how difficult for us to think about development, focus on development. That's not only effort and time, in terms of money even, investment even. Very less investors was coming to Sri Lanka and invest. Again, the political stability or turmoil, in other words, is very important. Nobody would come and invest if there is no political stability. If the political authority are unable to take a kind of a decision which is in turn support the investment community, probably they might not even thinking of moving to such a country. Economic vulnerability, instability of exports, agricultural production, use of natural resources. You may remind some kind of examples in Sri Lankan context into this also. So you understand that now when we have these factors which are stringent, which are detrimental, which makes a country difficult to move in the development index. So these are some of the things that you need to understand when you learn development financing, where we need to attack these type of things. Not doing microfinancing, not doing SME financing, not doing project financing. But so when you are setting the objectives, you need to understand our ultimate aim is to bring this country to the next level. How we can do is basically you need to know these are the factors that we need to focus. Maybe private investors, maybe government. We need to work on these also in order to support this economic growth. Hope you understand, though there are some micro factors, but these are important in terms of understanding the country's economy, country's development, and then only that we can think about a kind of a different financing propositions. Then we move to the significance of microfinancing, because we speak about general economy, economic development, parameters, factors impacting economic development. So then a microfinancing like SME also has a vital role in supporting this economic development. Let's see how. It encourages entrepreneurship and independence from government aid and or subsidies. What is all about that? It is basically, now when you see so many small entities and entrepreneurs in the country that cannot be addressed through small and medium industry segment or a corporate segment, then somebody should be there to support or make them independent from government aid and subsidies. If you take Jana Savi some time back, if you take Samudri, for example. So when people think that I am getting something from government, they always try to depend on that particular entity or that particular source. That's not good. But if you think that, yes, I am getting, but in terms of my future, I need to contribute something to the economy, then I'm getting back something from the economy. That's what we talk about entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship, in brief, it's something that if you shatter the equilibrium, we talk about, shatter the status quo, rather than waiting, I am happy being here, why not I attack this and get something out of this? To do that, you need to make people aware, train, guide, and be initiative, taking risk. So those things that you need to do. For that, microfinancing as a concept will help. If you take the second one, provides poor people the opportunity to earn sustainable income, which in turn allows for a better standard of living. If we give something free, yes, you can make their standard of living good. But remember, when you stop it, then again they come back to the original level, where the poor standard of living. But if you give a support to so-called poor people opportunity to earn sustainable income, see the keyword sustainable. So then it gives them confidence, that yes, I can make something, I can make sustainable, I can make this venture to next level. So then that they contribute to the economy, though it is small, and then they come to a next level of their life. So that's what basically the microfinancing could do. Third one, disposable income can lead to future development and growth. You obviously know, if you take in today's context, we may be students, or we may be earning some average salary, right? What we are not doing now. Maybe in another 5 years' time, you may be the managers, area managers, regional managers. Another 5 years, so you become AGMs, then DGM, corporate management. So when you are up in the ladder, you earn more. Then your disposable income is higher. Similar, if you are an entrepreneur, starting small, and you can go up in the ladder, where you can increase your income level, disposable income. Then you see what are the areas that I can spend. So in turn, it contributes the economy. Has a positive influence on social indicators, education, health, nutrition. Remember, those were some factors which could hamper country's economy. But when you are, confident, when you have sustainable income, then you can, attack. You can see how you get the best out of the education for your kids, to enhance your health status, and how you can, reduce the malnutrition in a country. So by doing that, again, you are coming top of your living standard. Empower the poor, which can correlate directly with political democracy and economic development. So when you empower the poor, empower means that in terms of making decisions. And then you understand, no, I am getting something, but this is not a regular method or regular way of income. I should do something. I should, contribute something to the economy. Then we think about, yes, some of my family members should employ. So then they can contribute something, because their knowledge level also going up. Then they think about what is, political harmony, democracy versus the economic development. They value it with the kind of understanding. So these are some of very high level, significant points where a microfinancing could come into play and help them. Now, this is all about micro entrepreneurs, micro entities, which is large in numbers. And then they can do so many impact, a bigger impact to economy. Last week, we discussed about SMEs. In SMEs, we saved 50-55% of that, the contribution. But when you say microfinancing, it's again is like a bottom of the SME in a pyramid, like. So they move to next microfinancing. Next stage could be the small type of entities, small organizations. But you can't just enter the small entity if you have not done your basics right in terms of microfinancing level. So about how to manage financial, how to manage your market, do good practices in management. I mean, those things are necessary in order to go up in the ladder in your business. So if you take large numbers, so that they can create a bigger impact. And if they do small things right, that is the importance of the microfinancing, right? So how you can, bring them to that level is basically you need to see how you are minimizing the damping factors we just discussed the last slide. And this is the significance. So if you see that these things are being attended, then it is a direct impact on economic development in country. Let's now move to the microfinancing. Earlier, we just discussed about the importance of microfinancing into country's economic development, the factors influencing the country's economic development, and what is like economic development, what are the parameters that we need to understand in economic development. So maybe very high level. It could be equally important for SME, maybe project financing, but you need to understand what is the context. In every country, somebody would have think about, yes, a very developed country like Israel, America, Netherlands, are they promoting microfinancing? So somebody say, no, why? Maybe now they have developed. No, still remember, when you say microfinancing, micro entities, there are so many numbers. Not everybody can move to the SME. There are some SMEs, there are mid-market customers, there are corporate customers, as well as microfinancing. So this is ever operating proposition. But only thing is the difference could be a developed country could use developed techniques, maybe higher impact through information technology on the microfinancing entities in developed country. Whereas a developing country cannot do the same thing. And maybe in developed country, a microfinancing is very profitable venture. Sometimes we can see it may have listed in the share markets, stock exchange also. Whereas our countries, it might not develop to that level. It's still we see a kind of not profitable organization, profitable venture, profitable propositions. It basically talks about AIDS and giving away something free. So that is the kind of, the things that we need to keep our eyes open, understand the practices. Having said that, now we move to understand a detail or definitions, key areas of microfinance. Do you have any questions so far? Any questions? I don't think that these are not very technical stuffs, but as I was telling, these are very important context content basically, because if in terms of exams, yes, very important input, and again very easy in terms of answering because not technical, but when you are into this, you understand these are very interesting topics, because when you go out in the market, you can see a many number of microfinancing entrepreneurs, entities, so that you can help them out in several ways to support their entities. Okay. Dr. Muhammad Yunus, who is basically the pioneer of this microfinancing concept. It's a professor attached to Bangladesh universities. So he was the founder member of Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, and actually he won the Nobel Peace Prize for his contribution in these sectors. So some highlights of Grameen Bank Bangladesh, you can read through, can see the contribution by a microfinancing entity can do in reviving the country's economy. Yes, there are some critics that we need to debate, we need to research on, where the microfinancing may have not completely supported to reviving the country's economy. If you take today's Bangladesh economy, have not reached to the developed nation status. So it's not the only answer, but it plays a vital role in reviving economies. But that is being argued, that when you are doing microfinancing from now 1970s, almost 50 years or so, but still they have not come to a level as accepted in terms of the parameters we have just spoken about. So then there may be critics against that also. But having said that, we had to give kind of a due recognition to Muhammad Professor Dr. Yunus for his initiative and the present status of the microfinancing concept, which has been spread out in so many countries in worldwide. Right. So then, before understanding the definition, we try to understand why the microfinancing as a proposition. Why microfinancing? Any arguments? Any thoughts? First one, majority of low-income group people. If you think and if you are scanning a particular economy, especially like these third world or developing countries, you can see there are majority of population comprised of low-income group people. So they don't have access to formal financial institutions like bank. Their cash flows are not regular or more or less seasonal. They are not in position to offer collateral where the banks are demanding. And again, that they don't have the proofs for assessing their income. So there are some kind of concerns. And then when you have these concerns, they're still in the low income level because you are unable to get financial support from a traditional financial institutions. That's number one. Number two, when you see this formal or regular or contemporary financial institutions, they don't or they can't directly offer products which suitable to these low income groups. One thing could be these low income groups are spreading out in different areas where formal institutions may not have adequate branches to service them. Or they may be spread out in different sectors where you are unable to make a kind of a significant financing opposition on the particular sector because you don't have that risk appetite, for example. Or maybe they need like financing for about 7 days to 14 to 30 days, where most of the financial institutions may think about medium to long term. So those are again some concerns which work against this microfinancing proposition by these established or formal institutions. Third one, they perceive higher transaction and service cost. What is that? Because since this is a low in number, I mean to say a financial loan amount that they are going to approve, and then the tick value or the asset that you are creating is in a portfolio terms, it could be big, but in bigger numbers, I must say, right? Example, say if you into the SME, if you're into mid-market, you make 100 million portfolio by 5, 10, 15 customers. But in terms of microfinance, to make the 100 million, sometimes you need 50,000, I mean 10, 15,000 customers, which tells you the cost of the service, the cost of the transaction. Because it again, though it's a 10,000 loan or a 1 million loan, the transaction cost more or less could be high. But when you have that number into 15,000 contracts, transaction, your cost of transaction would be high. Again, when you say credit risk, the default risk again could be high, because since that numbers are high, and again their credit worthiness or the suitability to the credit compared to established customers may be low. So then you might be at a difficult wicket in recovering those credits. So basically it tells that, you know, financial institutions, they perceive higher transaction and service cost. And again, they perceive higher credit risk. So when you see these things, then we need some other institutions to support this type of groups, because formal, established, or what you call contemporary financial institutions are not able to support these type of customers, because these are the requirements of microfinancing entrepreneurs. Then we need to find a solution. So that is the microfinancing that we are discussing here. That is the microfinancing proposition. So if you deploy the microfinancing concepts, microfinancing proposition, then you can support this target group. Okay. Then again, we can understand a bit further why these people are excluded from certain financial services. Lack of collateral, bad credit history, gap in the communication or lack of confidence in the banks, doubt of their repayment capacity, lack of access to financial infrastructure and services in the remote area. So the previous slide, if we talk about more macro level perspective, this is a clear operational issues that confront by the banks, because they are unable to provide collaterals, they are unable to provide acceptable guarantees to the banks, or they are unable to show their credit history, or maybe due to various reasons, as I was telling about seasonal flow of income and all that, may be highly vulnerable to natural disasters. They have a bad credit history, which in turn, you know, stops banks evaluating further. And then gap in the communication. They tell something, the bankers understand in a different way, or lack of confidence. So those are a kind of some problems, issues between the banks and the microfinancing entrepreneurs. Repayment capacity, because since that we are unable to gauge their repayment capacity, then it makes us doubt. So we don't know that they can pay it or not. So then we are unable to, you know, go further into the credit request. Lack of access to financial infrastructure and services, because since most of the microfinancing entrepreneurs and entities are located in rural or remote areas, then the bank they don't have adequate access channels. So again, I am telling, these are the things that we talk about. These are the talks that we talk about, issues faced by the financial institutions. Then the alternative could be microfinancing, right? Then we try to understand microfinancing more in terms of definition. What is micro? Micro is micro entrepreneurs. They are self-employed, low income population, excluded population. So you can understand when you say micro, they are entrepreneurs and entities, or they are self-employed. Obviously, they earn a lesser income, and again, they are excluded population. So in one side, you have some micro segment, and then we talk about financing. Financing is not only giving loans. it could be financial side as well as non-financial side. If you take financial side, it could be business and educational loans. That could be microcredit. It's a credit term. So granting a loan. Loans could be different types. It could be businesses, educational loans, working capital loans. I mean, so many things. Then also we talk about savings, micro savings. These people would save. That will be again coming under the financing umbrella. Then we talk about insurance. That is also important. Micro insurance, because numbers are huge and you can create insurance, micro insurance, remittances. Another method of financing, or maybe sources of financing, which is again coming under financing part. This is a financial side. Non-financial is basically where you give some support, maybe qualitative support, to bring them more finance savvy professionals, like training, coaching, workshops on health, hygiene, market management, so those areas. So by doing so, that you will uplift their standard in terms of financial literacy. Then you also provide financial support. By combining those things, you can make a good finance professional, a good finance guy, finance discipline business person. So basically there are two aspects: micro, finance. Micro, you define several aspects, and finance, you define financial side and non-financial side. Then you see the definition, maybe the formal definition is the offer of financial and non-financial services. I think you can easily think about what we just discussed the last slide. Financial, non-financial services to people excluded from traditional banking system. The services are adapted to the needs of the target population. So basically, it talks about financial and non-financial service. That's what the finance side we talk about. And when you talk about the micro side, excluded from the traditional banking system, adapted to the needs of the target population. So when you say the needs, basically, so we can think about these needs to be targeted by the microfinancing proposition, and which will enable the recipients, beneficiaries, to create, reduce, improve, empower. These are the key attributes of microfinancing definition. What is create? Sustainable activities to increase their income. If you remember correct, we talk about sustainable income. So it says because it could be regular. It's not irregular income. Right? Today you have, tomorrow you don't have, means it's not sustainable. Today, tomorrow, day after, next week, next month. So that is the sustainability we talk about. To do that, sustainable activities to be there to increase their income. That is create. Reduce external shocks. What is that? If something happens to world business, something happens to a particular country's business, something happens to a particular region's business, then there you have to create a occasion, status where they can, work against that particular impact and to minimize that impact. Reduce external shocks. Because since that you have grown, you have some kind of a savings. If something has happened, so you can, be in control. Not 100% dependent on those things. Everybody is in trouble, but if you take a pandemic like this, everybody is impacted, but still you may be in a shorter term, you can withstand those external shocks. So that's a good thing that you can create. So that is one of the outcomes of the microfinancing. Improve the living condition. We talk about standard of living. You have to enhance, improve the conditions. So that is again the support, outcome, attribute. Last one, empower people, especially women entrepreneurs. This is one of the key objectives of microfinancing. So again, telling microfinancing, microfinance, when you say finance, financial services, micro is a kind of a targeted population we call excluded from the traditional banking system. And by doing so, you are trying to give the recipients, enable the beneficiaries, creating, reducing, improving, and empowering. This is a very important slide. So probably you can, use this in terms of exam purposes also. When it comes to exam purposes, they might ask or they might test us on definition of microfinancing, attributes of microfinancing, objectives of microfinancing, target market of target audience of microfinancing. So those are the kind of the questions, and probably we can use this type of data information to answer that type of a question. Now move to the targeted customers. Who are the targeted clients? So in economy, we have high net worth individuals, we have middle class, we have low income, we have ultra poor. So then we need to target this low income category, poor and vulnerable, the bottom of the pyramid, more towards ultra poor. Because yes, though maybe they are low income category, but still remember they have some attributes, they have some qualities, they have some entrepreneurial vision. Only thing is they don't have adequate money. Sometimes they have drive, but they don't have financial support. So that's why the microfinancing concepts can work with them. That's why I was telling in the beginning, if you give something free, so they're still dependent on that. They are not, coming out of that thinking, I can do something, I can contribute to the economy. They are not coming to that level. There's a good saying in terms of supporting these low income individuals, groups. It says, don't, give fish, instead give a stick. So that they, they try to do fishing and catch fish, than sitting at home and eat fish given by somebody. So that's why the entrepreneurial thinking, you try to make them think, make them work, make them visionary. So you can do that by these concepts. So low income population, underprivileged population, focus like women entrepreneurs, right? But still they have entrepreneurial qualities, entrepreneurial thinking. So then, yeah, this is the target market, the target clients, targeted audience. And how can microfinance improve their lives? That is what we try to do in microfinancing. But when you're doing so, we sometimes come across these myths and realities. So some myths: poor are not bankable. But realities, poor are bankable. I was just telling, because we say underprivileged, low income groups, they are poor as per our yardsticks. We say they are unable to, we are unable to do with banking with them. That's a myth. But the reality is, as shown by the microfinancing providers, we can bank on them. Another one is microcredit. Microfinancing is only microcredit, giving loans. No, it's not. We just learn. It's not only microcredit, it's micro insurance, savings, remittances, that in terms of financing perspective. And there are so many other non-financial perspective also into this microfinancing proposition. The reality is range of financial services and non-financial services. That's a reality. So then as a banker, as a microfinance institutions, and you can think, not just give loans. I can do so many things with these individuals. So in turns, I can get a good wallet size information. A myth could be group lending. No, not only the group lending. When you up in the ladder in microfinancing proposition, you can do individual lending also, depending on the viability of the proposal, depending on the status of the individual or the microfinancing entity or the entrepreneur. Another myth is it's a social or charitable activity. People say social, it's charitable. No, it's not social or charitable anymore. Can be profitable also. Can make the microfinancing businesses profitable. So many countries have shown that, proven that. I was telling you, in some countries, microfinancing entities are listed in their share markets. Means it's profitable. So there are some myths, there are some realities also. So basically, this is all about a microfinancing as a concept. What is microfinancing? Why it is important? What are the factors influencing that banks are not supporting microfinancing? Or what are the damping factors where the banks could not into the microfinancing? Hence, the microfinancing institutions are there to support them. What's the definition? What's our target market? And how we are going to target those people through microfinancing application to bring them to next level? What are the myths and realities? Are things that right now we have been discussing. Then we talk about microfinancing constraints. What are the issues? Right? Yes, we did discuss something about banks' reluctance into the microfinancing segment. And not only that, so we see some other constraints also. That is information asymmetry. Because we talk about there's no credit history. You can't expect them to maintain a good credit history due to various reasons. But if we are trying to compare with 2 or 3 people, and if we don't have a credit history, then we can't take an informed decision. That is a kind of constraint. That's a kind of issue. As a banker, as a financing provider. Inability of a collateral. To some extent, yes, it's a problem. If you are trying to give a higher credit, sometimes obviously you have a credit risk around that, and then you need to work on that. You need to have some collateral. So might not be practical to ask collateral from everybody, but it's nice to have at some occasions. But unable to make you problematic. Lack of financial literacy, need close supervision. Yes, that's one of the objective in the microfinancing, also to support, create them in making financial literacy. But having absent the financial literacy, you need close supervision. For that, you need people, you need systems, which in turn creates a higher cost transaction or service cost. Geographical access, difficult geographical access. Maybe they are spreading out, they're located in different areas in the country. So maybe one organization might not be able to reach at a lesser cost. Easy access may not be available. Then low value transaction, high transaction cost, we discussed earlier. Low level of technology, very important part. Because it's good that, if you can deploy the advanced technology into these microfinancing practices. So if you don't have that, might create you some problems. Example, let's say maybe GPS technology to understand, identify the microfinancing ventures or entities located in the area. It's a good solution for you to, monitor them, their activity, then deploying number of staffs to monitor them, or maybe introducing a smart card system to do a payment transaction could be another value-added service through the technology driven with technology support. Yeah, then you may need not to personally meet the entrepreneur versus the banker or maybe microfinancing institutions. So you can work with in two places using this smart card system. So if you don't have that technology, then you might not be able to do those activities at a lower cost and with a super efficiency. So those are some of the constraints that also we need to keep it in our mind, where could have an impact on microfinancing propositions. Okay. Service providers, that's a good question, good area. We need to understand who are the service providers into this microfinancing proposition or microfinancing business. There are a couple of institutions, like a formal institutions could be development banks, commercial banks, rural bank, cooperative shops. So they are formally involved in this microfinancing business. Semi-formal, like NGOs, maybe cooperative societies which are unregistered. Those organizations also involved in microfinancing proposition. Finally, money lenders, shopkeepers also into this, though they're not formally allowed, but we can see many instances that these people also doing some of these picked practices within this microfinancing proposition. So in order to formalize this, yes, government has introduced some microfinancing act, but still yet to practice in full swing. But given some issues, the central bank right now has developed, and which is under discussion, to introduce a new act to cover not only microfinancing, even under the semi-formal or the informal sources of lenders, to cover that. So as a better support towards the entrepreneurs in order to cover their interest, now the new act has been discussed and formed. Okay. Then we try to understand now why the banks interested. Initially we discussed, yes, banks reluctant, banks inability, or banks are not in full swing in the microfinancing. But also the other side of the story is, banks interested in microfinancing. What are those? Meeting priority sector lending requirements, because time to time central bank or maybe regulatory authorities instructed banks to maintain or target priority sectors. Agree, for example, agriculture. So if such regulations are there, then banks to comply with those regulations. So that could be the priority sector. If it is so, yes, bank has to do it. Bank must do it. That's what we call a priority sector area. And CSR, as a corporate social responsibility, you also would be a part of initiative in your activities. Then third one, the banks has opportunities for growth. When the microfinancing industry flourishes, because if you are into that, if you have kind of some link to the microfinancing segment, if you have some know-how, experience in microfinancing lending, probably you will get a good return when they are doing well. Finally, risk diversification. What is that? So you basically diversify your risk. What do you mean by diversify? Because if you put everything in the, let's say, corporate segment, if you put everything in SME segment, something happened to corporate segment, something happened to SME segment, you have to have a high impact on your portfolio. Whereas if you have some kind of a portfolio exposure to microfinancing, then the vulnerabilities are different. The impacts are different in these sectors. So you can manage your portfolio risk. So diversification of risk also, it could be one of the arguments where the bank's interest lies on microfinancing. So here we are discussing what are the interest, why the banks are interested in microfinancing. So meeting priority sector lending, CSR, future opportunities, or risk diversifications are the key advantage that the bank could achieve if they are into the microfinancing proposition. Right. So before moving to the microfinancing models, any questions? Do you have any clarifications? Any feedback? I know this is not a difficult area, but having said that, I think everybody should give a try for the examination question if they give us. Because if you see my reading material, I have captured so many areas that could be tested in the exams. So you can read through and familiar. And when we do the past paper questions, you can further understand, familiar with the microfinancing. Yes, obviously, it might not be very much familiar to us because we are not hearing these concepts regularly. So you might know what's happening in retail banking, SME banking, corporate banking. Yes, we know because we have seen so many things are happening in our banking counters. But microfinancing, not very much. Not many banks are into this microfinancing in great deal. But what they have been doing is they are into the microfinancing in a pilot way. Sometimes they have approach some selected segments, selected industries, and they have piloted into that, and they have successful results on that also. But we are yet to go in a mass scale to microfinancing propositions. So any questions? Any thoughts?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, please. Sanjeev.
Yes, I'm having a doubt. Like, why banks are not into microfinance sectors, unlike finance companies? So, is there any particular reasons? As you can see that if you take some private banks like Commercial Bank, HNB, they are focusing on microfinance. Like if you take HNB, they were into HNB Grameen Finance. So, but except few banks, not much banks are focusing on microfinance sector. So, is there any particular reason for that?
Right, Sanjeev, very good question. And I will just take you through basically a couple of back into previous slides. If you think about this side, or maybe if you take this slide and this slide, which gives you the answer, I will summarize. Basically, Now, if you take established bankers, as you were correctly pointing out, Commercial, Sampath, and HNB, NDB, right? And those are private banks, and the government banks like Bank of Ceylon and People's Bank. But and you can't see they are very much into the microfinancing propositions. There are a couple of reasons. As you see these slides, basically, they predominantly given lending to customers. They see established, number one, and they give facilities against maybe the collateral, or they give facilities to the customers where the customers are located near to their branches, or they may be giving facilities to the customers where you can assess their risk capacity without doubt, where formal financials are available, collaterals are there, and businesses are taking place with more transparent manner, good management running the particular entities, and they are operating to good market. So now the banks, looking at these ventures, they are taking a calculated risk. A perception is also being say, we need to take a calculated risk. But when it comes to the microfinancing, so they can't maybe show the credit history, they are unable to offer collaterals, and they unable to make the bank confident, or they are maybe unable to show the kind of project plans, and they are unable to provide the project reports as expected by the bank. So those are some of the things in terms of micro entrepreneurs, micro entities perspective, because they don't have adequate support, maybe money, in order to make the bank comfortable, in very short words. So hence that the bankers may not be very much willing to take that risk. The other side of the story is the banks presume that they are comfortable with existing SME or mid-market and corporate type of clientele, because they see we are managing our portfolios with particular non-performing asset level, particular quality, particular income, so they are happy with that also. So then they are not moving to this segment. That's another sort of phenomena that we see why the banks are not moving to that. But having said that, we discussed, banks still interested also in microfinancing because they see some opportunities in the microfinance sector. So that's why some like established banks into the microfinancing sectors, though it's a pilot project, though not maybe the very large portfolio, but they are doing it in the microfinancing sector because they know that there is an opportunity in time to come. You can diversify the risk. It's a part of the CSR also, or maybe part of, you can consider that is part of your lending requirements. Like you can bring that under the agri portfolio. So that is basically, even some banks are moving to that. But technically speaking, why they are reluctant is basically as for the opposite reasons. Sanjeev, am I answered your question, or any doubts on that, or any clarification further?
Thank you, sir. It clarified me.
Okay, Sanjeev.
Thank you.
Anything, again, you can come back to me next week also.
Yeah, sure, sir.
Please go through the tunes, read the materials, and if you do have anything, just text me or let me question during the even next session. I don't mind that we can go back and we should be comfortable, because I was telling this very important area where in terms of exam concern is also, and it's not difficult also. If you get the concepts right, you can get maximum marks out of the examination question.
Sure.
Any other? Yeah, okay, Sanjeev. Any other questions from my team? Daham, Jayani, Naguleshwaran, are you all okay? Can we proceed further? So silence tell that you have got everything right. So let's see. So we move to the next level, next area. But still, if you do have any questions, please let me through kind of a chat or through a kind of question, even not today, maybe the next week. Everything like everybody is welcome, right? Move to the microfinancing models. Again, need to understand there are several models we need to understand in this microfinancing perspective. But there may be so many models practicing right throughout the globe. But here that we have taken 3 or 4 just for understanding how these concepts are working. So self-help group, joint liability group, Grameen model, individual lending. There are 4 types of groups that we are trying to discuss today. When you say self-help group, SHG model, so before moving to this, we show this diagram. We'll observe this diagram. Here, bank or the microfinancing institutions here. This is a self-help group here. So the direct interaction is between the bank and the self-help group, where NGO will act as a facilitator. It's not in between the bank and SHG. So basically, the 3 people are operating, bank or financial or microfinancing institutions here, and this is the self-help group, and NGO act as a facilitator. So we go back, right? This is a homegrown model. It's savings based, savings led. What it means, you save something within the group, and based on that, you can get some money from a financial institution. Then it meeting diverse needs. It could be personal to business to, so within that group, it meets different needs. That's been promoted by maybe NGOs as well as public sector banks. So these are very kind of highlights in SHG. And then we go into the further understanding how this group operates. A homogeneous group of about 10 to 20. What's a homogeneous group? Homogeneous group is basically, let's say in an area, you have similar interest, similar views, similar sentiments, similar thinking, right? So you have 10 to 20 people. And then what you do is, as a group, you save something, a regular amount, maybe daily, weekly. So by doing so, you have some kind of a saving within your group. Then what you can do is, so the group can, operate some given loans to the members, maybe small amount, 1,000 rupees, 2,000, 5,000. And the decisions also taken from the group members also. So this is basically them to give a time to learn financial discipline, how to save, how to repay, how to operate in the business, how to be in a team, how to develop team synergies, right? Because by doing so that you are into the financial discipline, then after some time, then they may create a bigger pool of funds. Then they can reach to a bank or financial institution, and keeping that deposit, you can get a loan from the bank, or maybe beyond some amount, because based on your track record, and then that will add to the SHG kitty or the cash portfolio. Then the borrowers can take money out of that. So if you see this, it's a very primitive method where you are not seeing so many interactions. So it's within the group. Decisions are taken within the group. And you are save something and you can get back something. Not only the loans, but you develop the other financial discipline activities. So when you're doing for some time, then you are maturing level by level to become a credit-worthy individual. So based on that savings, yes, you can go to a bank and say, as a team, as a group, we have saved this much, and can you give loan against this? So based on the track record, based on the industry, based on the operating model, bank or the NGO, the whoever into the financial perspective, they can give some money back. So that again will add to the kitty we call. So then the borrowers, the group members can borrow the money from that. Advantage here is because a number is within your community, it's a homogeneous group, and you save something to get back, and you develop the repayment or the good habits in financial perspective. So by engaging with this number of people, so you have become a next level entrepreneur. That's what we do self-help. So lesser interaction from the third parties. NGO is there to facilitate if it is acting as a facilitator. Bank or the non-financial organization or maybe the financial institutions are there to support you if you come to a acceptable level of savings and if you come to a acceptable financial discipline level. That's the first or the primitive model that you can experience in the microfinancing models. Number 2, joint liability group. That's beyond the next level. Again, going to the model architecture, where you have a bank, then you come the microfinancing institution in between, then the joint liability group. The bank could lend to the MFI could lend to JLG, and JLG repay, MFI repay. JLG, MFI, again, the financial advisory support also being given. This is the kind of architecture. Go back to the infrastructure discussion. 5 to 6 individuals form a group for availing a loan. So there you don't have 10 to 20 people. The group could be 5 to 6. And members mutually guarantee each other's loan. Say myself and there are 4 or 5, 6 entrepreneurs. We form a group. And if I take a loan from the microfinancing institution, there are 2 other individuals come and guarantee my loan. If the rest, another individual, then myself and another entrepreneur will guarantee. So the cross guarantees among the group. And the loans are not linked to the savings. Now, previously, whatever you save and you can get back a small loan quantums. But here, lending is not linked to the savings. And loans given to individual members of the group again. Let's say this is not the loan to the group. Now, earlier, it's loan to the group based on the savings as a group. But here within the group, individuals are there. Individuals get a loan from the microfinancing institution. No group meeting. Members typically involved in different projects but are still joint liable for the repayments. Now, earlier is a homogeneous self-help group. But joint liability group, it must necessarily to be in the same homogeneous activity. I might be doing moldy fish trading, somebody may be doing agriculture, somebody doing the trading, somebody doing the manufacturing or processing garment, right? There are 5-6 individuals, but we are into different businesses. But remember, payments also have to be undertaken by myself if for my loan. But the rest of the 2 people who guarantee, again they are liable. If I'm not going to pay, they are responsible, though they are doing different businesses. Initial loans to the groups are small, and if they are successful repayment, subsequent loans can be bigger. The microfinance institutions may initially give 50,000 ticket size, and over a period of time that could go to 75,000, that could go to 100,000, because that tells you the groups are being formed, being operated as per the satisfaction of the financial provider. In case of default, other members are liable to pay for the defaulting member. That's what the guarantee says. But this is better than the SHT. Less in number, different businesses, cross guarantees, loans to individuals can be enhanced based on your repayment, and there may be no group meetings kind of thing. The MF will decide, what to give and what not to give. Right? JLG, Joint Liability Group. Then we see a Grameen model, which has been developed in Bangladesh. That's a more formal, professional, sophisticated model after the JLG. So this is basically a most accepted model. So again, 5 members form a group. You have groups again, but 8 groups form a center. Now you have 5 people in a different business activity, form a group. So like that, there are 8 groups. They form a center. Now this center meets every week. So the leaders again chosen by the members. Like JLG, regular savings are not compulsory. Loans are not linked to the savings. Again, loans to individual borrowers by the MFI. Loan proposals approved by the center. Here that you can, have some project proposals. The center would basically approve. And, microfinance institutions are there, right? They will lend. Here again, the loans being guaranteed by the other members and they are liable to pay. Not many changes, but this being more professionally operated because there are several groups. That groups will form a center. Center will have a more authority over those groups about loans, repayments, approving credit, right? And then more synergies also, more bargaining power also, more controls. That's what we call the Grameen model, because this has been practiced and many, success stories, right? And we can't say this is like, the correct method, but this could be accepted by many, and because this has some similarities in the JLG, but more advanced features than the JLG. So when you say self-help, when you say JLG, when you say Grameen, now the customers, individuals has come to the next level. So that is basically, now they are ready to go for individual lending, like small organization. In SME, the lower segment is small enterprises or individual customers beyond some microfinancing income threshold, turnover threshold. Then they are ready to take individual lending. This is like they come to a bank and take a loan. Proposals originated from individuals. They are not necessarily a team or a group. Then appraisal done by the microfinancing institution, so the bank. Loan to be sanctioned by MFI, there's a no intermediary requirement like previous occasions. It's generally for good track record guys, because they have been throughout this cycle, SHG, JLG or Grameen model, and then they come to an individual level, because they are not coming from nowhere. They are coming from that ladder. They have developed the financial discipline. Cash flows, ability to service the loan is criteria for assessing the loan size. Now, not like savings or not like previous credit history is a part of that, but cash flows, future cash flows, how they generate cash are the criteria for assessing loan size. And collateral may be a requirement depending on the loan amount. So this is like a small model what we do at SME. This individual lending, but they are the highest level in the microfinancing ladder. Now they are ready to move to the small businesses segment. So this is individually handled, individually assessed, individually given credit. And their repayment capacity, important. Cash flow generation, important. What could be the future business plan, important. And depending on the collateral or depending on the risk levels, we might see the collateral support as well. That's what we see the individual lending model. These are the 4 models that we try to learn from SHG to JLG to Grameen. Next to the individual level. If you see the SHG to the Grameen in kind of more chronological order, right? Some difference between SHG and the Grameen, you can see like this: better savings habit, stronger group, lower interest rates. MFI have to cover all intermediation costs, like so then interest rates are higher. Clients can borrow immediately without savings. Loan dispersed are higher and individual. Loan tenure shorter, allow to increase loan size faster. So basically, if you say starting from SHG to the Grameen, this is how basically it has been changing. Initially, we talk about saving. Initially, we talk about team dynamics. Initially, we talk about cohesion among group, right? And interest rates are a bit lower because you are lending against savings. But when it comes to the latter part, Grameen level, where MFIs in the operation, so they provide give financing, maybe guarantees are there, and the transaction costs are higher, interest rates bit higher because it's not savings led, right? Then they can borrow without savings, right? Loan are being frequently granted and then repaid, re-granted, and loan dispersed are higher than the individual, right? Because higher than the SHG, and loans are individual basis. So this is what you can see when you are becoming the more sophisticated member in the microfinancing proposition. Start with something very new, I mean as a novice to the microfinancing, and then later you end up with individual very good customer in a very good bank. So during your journey, you might learning not only the financing side, but also the non-financial habits, activities as well. This is all about some features of microfinancing models. Now, all these 3, SHG, JLG, Grameen, are group model, and the last one is the individual model. And we try to compare the individual model versus the group model here. Lending to a single person under individual lending. Larger or more diverse loans than group lending. In the group lending, yes, it's limited. Or maybe SHG level is limited to the savings. Even beyond that, it's limited because there are some guarantees provided by the other individuals. So there's a limited exposure. But individual, there is not necessarily the guarantees, but there may be other securities so that you can go to the higher loan tickets. Loan is being processed through cash flows, ability to repay, business plan, or then historical approach, then the group dynamics, then the savings, monitoring of the business at relationship manager level. Because MFI is always in touch with the customer, entrepreneur about repayment, about monitoring of the business, which is again critical because this is being individually handled. It's vulnerable to other dynamics in the environment. So you need to keep on monitoring on these businesses. More skilled credit officer required, because here skilled credit officer is a requirement. Why? Loan tickets are high, dynamics are different, because you are individually approving and individually repaying. So the credit officer should know a better credit insights to the industry, to the individual, to other environmental dynamics. So individual lending is a similar like SME transaction lending, but it's a higher side of the microfinancing models. So basically we have learned 4 models: SHG, JLG, Grameen, and individual. Also we have seen some chronology from SHG to Grameen, and also we identified what's the differences between the individual lending versus the group lending. So now we move to get some idea about Microfinancing Act, which has been passed in the Parliament in 2016. I have given you some major areas here, right? And also what are the businesses can be undertaken under the Act, under these 2 slides. First, basically, if you see what are the areas, it's similarly like a banking act, right? Except they can, operate current accounts, all other things that they can do, so which has been discussed, which will be discussed in the next slide, what are the businesses they can undertaken. But under this act, the major areas in the focus is licensing and business restrictions on the licensed microfinance companies, managing of licensed companies, directions, regulations, and financial statements or audit of licensed companies, supervision and examination, license cancellation, and MF microfinancing non-government organization, and the principal standards guidelines laid by the board. So these are high-level areas. Why should I show this is basically, sometimes as per examination requirements, we need to understand, we need to write short notes on what are the key areas, major areas, key attributes in Microfinance Act. If a question in that nature, you should be knowing these areas where under the Act, we are supposed to cover these areas. Those are the major areas coming under the microfinance. And then a final slide on the presentation. It is, what are the businesses? As I was telling you, other than accepting current accounts or demand deposits, basically current accounts, most of other activities can be handled by microfinancing institutions, like a bank, like a finance company. If you see couple of them. It provides financial accommodation with or without collateral for all types of economic activities, including housing. So basically it tells you can do housing, you can do owning, you can do business loans to this microfinancing entrepreneurs with or without collateral. So that basically they can operate under whatever model we discussed, and as a microfinancing institution you can do financial accommodation. That's about microcredit. If you remember, credit, insurance, remittances are some of the functions coming under microfinancing, not only the credit, right? The next is accept time and savings deposits, open, maintain and manage deposit, savings and other similar. So basically it talks about deposits. So microfinancing, not only lending, micro loans. You do micro loans, you do micro savings also. Provide credit to buy, sell and apply industrial and agricultural inputs. That's the kind of some purposes. Invest money imprudently. They can do some investments also. They can invest some of their money in the government, for example. Central bank treasury bill, treasury bonds, and maybe promissory notes, right? So they can, invest the money. They provide professional advice to its customer regarding investment in small business, self-employment, cottage industries. What is that? Because it's like a non-financial service that you are providing them. You can do that also. Not only microfinancing accommodation on terms of financial, you can do non-financial services like this. So basically, you can do most of the activities right now being practiced by the banks or the finance companies under the Microfinancing Act if you are registered under the 2016 Act. Just to refresh your mind, though this act has been passed, but it's not very properly operating as of present context. Central Bank has now revised this act by incorporating some other businesses like money lenders and all that to make more visible, transparent and regularize those industries. So that is being developed, that is being formally done, I suppose, but yet to publish. So if that act comes, then it replenish the particular replaces this act and will be will be available for this microfinancing and related businesses to get registered and do the businesses. So this is all about the microfinancing, where we try to learn about in general what is country's economic development, factors affecting country's economic development, key parameters, and how the microfinancing can contribute to country's economic development. That's part one. Part two, we were trying to understand microfinancing in detail about defining factors, constraints, why banks are reluctant, why banks are interested. So we went into detail about microfinancing concept. Thirdly, we discussed 4 models among many models. Understand the microfinancing business, how we deliver, how we are trying to reach the customers. Self-help, joint liability, Grameen model, and the individual model. Finally, we briefly touch on 2016 Microfinancing Act. So where we discuss about what are the major areas under the Act, what are the businesses can be engaged by the microfinancing institution as per the present Act or the present context, which is basically I want to share with you. And then we move to reading material where I will just run through what are the areas which you need to be familiar with, because as I was telling you, this is very important area in terms of exam. You are supposed to read through, go through, understand the presentation. Similarly, you need to understand the reading material, which again I have extracted some present developments, and also I have extracted some past paper insights into the microfinancing questions. So if you are going through this module, you'll be able to understand the microfinancing in Sri Lankan context, while also providing some questions posed by the examiner during the last 4 or 5 years. We are starting with history of regularizing the microfinancing business. As I was telling you, the present effort is to replaces the 2016 Act, and for the betterment or the better regulation of this industry. Then defining the microfinancing I have also given here, right? So it has been also in the presentation, but you need to understand a key definition of the microfinancing. Then the target group, key objectives. So even that is again important for the exam. So they sometimes ask what is the target group, target audience of the microfinancing, and they ask again what is the key objectives of the microfinancing. So these are the area that you need to be thorough when you're answering that 2 questions. Then essential elements of microfinancing delivery method. We talk about 4 methods, but when you are trying to discuss about those models, but there are some critical elements that you need to understand. That is identification of the business skills. If you remember correct, I was telling you, entrepreneurs are there, but they don't have adequate finance support, but they have the business skills, entrepreneurial skills, which is very important. Because if you invest on the entrepreneur, where the entrepreneur does not have the entrepreneurial skills, that is not a correct investment, proper investment, valid investment. First, you understand the proper person with business entrepreneurial skills. Then small group arranging, financial literacy, and then loans with cross guarantees, close follow-up. Those are essential. In whatever loan, these are essential. But in terms of microfinancing also, this is very important, because we talk about vulnerable groups, low income population. They don't know much about financial discipline. So you need a critical attention on these aspects. It has been described further, right? We are going to do all those things. Then we talk about some microfinancing in Sri Lankan perspective, some data. But again, just this is for your reading, but not exactly relevant for exam content, but better get an idea about history of Sri Lanka and those. Then when come to institutions, again important. We also discussed this, but there may be a question in relating to this area, where institutions engage in microfinance in Sri Lanka. LBCs, licensed commercial bank, licensed special banks, finance company, Samurdhi Bank, cooperative, so many things. Better you know about at least 3 to 4 organizations with a kind of a brief description. So in case the examiner asks about to list down some institutions, yes, you are able to answer, and describe, then you again be able to, because if you know a bit of description relating to particular institution. Then this is major concerns. This is not particular to Sri Lankan context, but generally observed in many countries. So you need to know this, because this is again a testable content, as well as because we need to understand when we are trying to do microfinancing business, what are the concerns, what are the areas that you need to be watchful, what are the issues faced by when doing microfinancing business, right? regulation supervision, improve the environment, encourage women entrepreneurs, market interventions, high interest rate, unethical loan recovery. So these are some of the issues, concerns that you need to be alert. Let's say unethical loan recovery, example. This is an issue because when you give a loan, you give everything, very fashionably, right? Very ethically. But when they are not in a position to pay back, then you deploy unethical recovery practice, which is not acceptable and encouraged also. But it's an issue because though you have regulations, you have practices, but institutions are doing these things, which is detrimental to the microfinancing as a business proposition. You shouldn't be doing that. There should be other methods to encourage them to pay. Right? Maybe acquisition should be right than recovery. Right? So these are the facts that you need to be watchful, not only Sri Lanka but in worldwide also. Then if you this one, I think we already discussed as per the Act, what are the businesses they can do? What are the business activities they can undertake, perform? Very important. I mean, you need to be at least aware with 4 or 5 activities, because it again could be a very important question in terms of exam. Then this is areas of microfinance. We discussed under the presentation where the Microfinancing Act passed in 2016 covers these areas. Again, this is objectives and the target group. We discussed again the target group, target audience, and the key definition related thing. So this again, we need to know what are the objectives of microfinancing. So when the examiner asks about what are the objectives, so you should be able to write at least 3 or 4 points here. If you remember here, external shocks: create, reduce, increase, enhance network, women empowerment, standard of living, economic development, right? There are so many things. But better be aware, be prepared. Then it's easy because it's not difficult, as I was telling you earlier. It's all about theoretical aspects, but good that you are 100% confident about the microfinancing applications. Then target group: vulnerable, unbankable, so entrepreneurial skills. There are some keywords here. Last is not 2 items where financial inclusion. What is financial inclusion? Financial products and services are there, vulnerable groups are there, should be affordable cost, fair and transparent manner by mainstream financial institution. There are 5 items here in the financial inclusion. That is to offer appropriate financial products and services, to whom? Vulnerable groups, and the method affordable cost in fair and transparent manner by whom? Mainstream financial institution. So that's what the financial inclusion is. Sometimes it's a kind of a definition which may have not been discussed in the presentation, but I have given here. It could be important again for exam. Differ from conventional bank. I think we discussed in a different perspective in the presentation. Here, microfinancing institutions that you are trying to compare with the conventional banks, right? So what are the differences? What things do differently by the microfinancing institutions compared to conventional banks? And why microfinancing institutions needed to provide financial literacy? Not only the financial accommodation, they need to give financial literacy. That's not only the financial products, but also the non-financial products. Why? Because you need to bring them from level A to level B. Microfinancing level 2, small and medium sector. So these are the 14 areas that I have given it in detail, where you need to go through and get familiarized. Because why I want to include this here is because for exam purposes, it's good that you know these areas. So far, whatever has been included in the exams I have taken and shared it with you so that you are, I mean, fully comfortable for the exam purposes. Right. With that, I am done with the presentation. Any questions? Any thoughts? As always telling you that you can go through it. If you have any questions, you can raise it even the next session, no harm. And hope that you are getting the tudes presentation. And since that your transportation time is now saved by this online application, online method, make sure that you know then and there you try to cover the areas that what we are discussing, so that we don't have any hiccups for areas at the end of the session. So thank you, Daham. I got your message, really appreciated. Naguleshwaran, you're asking, is microfinancing is not popular in Sri Lanka because if we don't have well-developed equity market? No, it is not exactly true, Naguleshwaran, because you need not to have the equity market in order to do the microfinancing, but there may be other reasons, as I was mentioned, because we, the bankers, we are lack of willingness. Our willingness is issue. Our risk appetite is not there, and in terms of regulation, it's not so great. But even with the adequate funding, we can reach and we can get best out of the microfinancing availability proposition. But as banks, as established banks, we are yet to take that a higher risk, which obviously it's a part of the microfinancing proposition, not exactly the equity market issue, right? Because if you say equity market or develop equity market, we can do so many other equity market product like derivatives and all that, but that's not the issue. Even though we have capital, we still don't prefer to go into the microfinancing market. Any questions? Okay. Let's again then to tell you that if you do have any questions, we will take it up the next session and go through this and be ready with whatever the sessions that we have done so far. About 4 sessions we have done, and probably next week we can start break-even analysis, which is a bit technical or quantitative methods to be adopted. So we will take up the break-even analysis next week, and so wish you a good week ahead, and thank you very much for today's participation.